Yeah. If you need 2 minutes, I'll pray this in now. Sorry, brother. Excuse us. Just two more minutes, inshallah.
Is very slow.
Is it?
But it's recording. I'm recording. The internet is very slow because it's a cell phone, right?
Yeah, but it should be a decent speed.
At least you're online.
Online? Hey, let me know when we're ready,
It's
inshallah.
weak, but it's working.
Okay. So we're good?
Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بشر وأنذر لا خير إلا دل الأمة عليه ولا شر إلا حذرها منه فصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين نسأل الله جل وعلا أن يبصرنا بالحق وأن يمن علينا بالالتزام به والثبات عليه حتى يتوفانا وهو راض عنا اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا وعملا متقبلا اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل from there and it wasn't ready. They're like, oh, it's another 15 minutes. I'm like, 15 minutes? Subhanallah, so we got delayed. قدر الله وما شاء فعل. Tonight is the night of the 29th of Safar of the year 1439 since Hijrat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which translates into November 18th today, right? 18th? Yeah, November the 18th of the Gregorian calendar, 2017. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make all the brothers and sisters who are present with us in this masjid, Masjid al-Huda, or those who may be tuning in live on YouTube or on Spreaker, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of us mubarakin, blessed in ourselves and in our families, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this majlis al-ilm, which is a majlis dhikr, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a majlis mubarak and beneficial majlis that where we learn and we study and we contemplate the ayat of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we try to reap the benefits and the treasures and the guidance that are in these ayat and in these ahadith, and we pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make our reward after we are done here, that it will be said to us, go, you have been forgiven. Allahumma ameen. Like I said, subhanAllah, we got delayed by the qadr of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, but I wanted to quickly remind everybody, whether they are present in this masjid or they may be online, to please ask questions if you have anything, if you are still in doubt about anything that we're going to be talking about. If you have any question or anything that is not clear, by all means, send your questions, sisters included, and those brothers who are online, you are free to send your questions, and we'll make sure that we actually address them, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. As you know, we've been commenting on this great text of Aqidah, called Aqidah At-Tahawiyyah, a very famous and popular book that we said, or it is called Aqidah At-Tahawiyyah, titled after its author, Al-Imam Abu Ja'far At-Tahawi Al-Hanafi, a great scholar of Madhab al-Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, rahimahullah ta'ala. And we said there is a consensus among all the scholars of Islam, across all the madhahib, that this aqidah, like many other texts of aqidah, they are representative. It is a concise and short summary of the aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And they said this is among other textbooks, it is representative of the mu'taqad of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the set of beliefs and the set of aqa'id that we hold with respect to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And for those who have been attending regularly, we know that we've been commenting on this text of aqidah statement by statement. And as a matter of fact, we've been numbering those statements as you see on the slide. We number those statements and we comment on each one of them and try to benefit from it and comment on what we need to understand from it and what we need to believe in it. Now, subhanAllah, last week, to my surprise, I got a question, and it just came to my mind. So I wanted to clarify that some people are thinking that whatever I'm displaying on the screen is something, is not just the text itself, but rather also something that I added to it. I wanted to clarify. I thought it was clear. I thought it should have been clear. Nothing that you see on the screen is something that I added or somebody else added to it. This is the 100% pure text of the Aqidah itself. Nothing added at all. This is exactly the letter. Obviously, it's a translation. Obviously, Imam Abu Ja'far did not speak English, right? Did he? He's an Arabic speaker. So, obviously, it is the original text is in Arabic. This is I hope it's a faithful, very accurate translation, letter by letter, word by word, of the original text. Nothing added at all. This is exactly his words, his statements, only translated into English. The commentary that we're making in here is the clarification that we're making on this, obviously, because a lot of those statements need to be clarified and need to be explained and expanded, especially on some terms, as you've seen before. Sometimes we take one term that is key to the statement and we try to explain what it is, and if it has multiple meanings, then what those meanings are and which one Imam Abu Ja'far actually meant or wanted from the statement. I also wanted to remind you, and this is something that I mentioned several times before, that whatever commentary we're making in this halaqah, it's not something that I am making up from my mind, brothers and sisters. Al-Aqidah is nothing new. There's nothing new in the Aqidah. We're merely conveying what our righteous ancestors, starting from الصحابة رضوان الله عليهم أجمعين, and التابعين, and التابعين, and the greatest generation that came afterward, and أئمة الإسلام, whatever they conveyed to us with respect to what we should believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. There's nothing new in here. We're not inventing, we're not making up. I'm not bringing anything from myself. It's not my personal or own opinion. As a matter of fact, I seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal that He does not make us, does not make me and you among those who speak based on their own personal opinion or ideas, but rather we speak based on the proofs, on the evidences, al-burhan, and al-dalil from al-Quran and al-sunnah, sahih al-sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because this is the guidance. This is the guidance. The guidance is in the Quran and in the sunnah, and the understanding of those righteous generations, right? So there's nothing new. As a matter of fact, and this is the point that I was trying to make, is that one of my main references that I'm using is the commentary that Al-Imam Ibn Abi al-Izz al-Hanafi, again a great scholar of Madhab al-Imam Abu Hanifa, who came several centuries after Imam Abu Ja'far, and he actually expanded. He wrote a commentary on this text and expanded on it, and this is one of the main references that we're using in here. So we're not, like I said, there's nothing new in here. We're not bringing anything of ourselves, but rather merely conveying what we were taught, what was conveyed to us from the right understanding of these statements by Imam Abu Ja'far At-Tahawiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. With that said, inshallah, let's get started with the actual statements. Just to refresh your memory, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. And before I do that, by the way, we still have those two chairs, Abdullah, if you can, or Abdul Aziz, if you can, those floor chairs. I know the brothers liked them last week. They're pretty comfy. So there are two only. If you guys like them, inshallah, I'll bring more. I'll purchase more and bring more, inshallah. And by the way, just speaking of that real quick, to get all of this out of the way so that we can focus. Brothers and sisters, wallahi, I have absolutely no problem. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't, it's not a disrespect or anything of that kind. If you don't feel comfortable sitting on the ground, if you want to use a chair or whatever, by all means, sit the way you feel comfortable. What matters in this halaqah is understanding. Whatever that helps you understand, whatever that helps you, stay up and, and focused and everything. If you want to bring a cup of coffee, you want to, even stand up for that matter at some point, stretch those legs as you're listening. I have that doesn't bother me at all. It's not a disrespect, nothing at all. Or, feel free to sit the way you want, whatever makes you comfortable. What matters to me, and this is what I hope that we take away from this halaqah, is that we, understand. We stay focused and understand, and we build a sound and robust understanding of Aqidah At-Tahawiyyah wal Jama'ah. This is the Aqidah, and this is the belief that Allah Azza wa Jal is making us worship Him by. This is how we worship Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not just the salah and the siyam. As a matter of fact, Al-Aqidah is a set of belief that we worship Allah Azza wa Jal with. We worship Allah Azza wa Jal by Tawheed. We worship Allah Azza wa Jal by the belief in the different things that He conveyed to us and He taught to us, and He made it wajib on us to believe in. That's also part of the ibadah. This is part of the ta'abbud of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Clear? Right. So you've got my permission. You're free to sit any way you want.
Whose translation is this?
This is a translation that I found online from a trustworthy resource. They just did the translation, nothing more. So it's just a pure or faithful translation of the Arabic text into English, nothing more. And I'm reviewing it as I'm, going through. So, at one point I had a comment on one of them, and I switched the word. I thought I switched to a word that I thought would be better translation or better, sticking to the meaning of the Arabic text. But in general, mashallah, I think it's a pretty good English translation.
Last time I noticed it used the word whispering. I think in wrong sense. Whisper means najwa.
Whispering.
Yeah, that's whispering. You see something
Yes.
from whispering.
There is the whispering of a shaitan as well, which is al-waswasa, from al-waswas. That's also is called the waswasa. Waswasa is this whispering in the mind, not the whispering with somebody else in najwa. I agree. In najwa or the tanaji, right, is actually to talk to another person, secretly, when there are other people present as well. So you see, I'm unaji, or even it's called when you are actually munajatullah. You're actually invoking Allah Azza wa Jal secretly. That's also called munajat. Naja rabbahu, yani he invoked his Lord as well. But this whispering is different. The whispering is these ideas that come to the mind, and they start circulating in your mind. They could be from a shaitan. It could be from the nafs, from the soul itself, from the person himself or herself, right? So we're going to actually quickly refresh your memory. But, I wanted to quickly refresh your memory about those, several statements that we've been commenting on for the last couple of weeks. If you remember, these are statements that Imam Abu Ja'far made after talking about al-ru'ya, the aqidah of al-ru'ya, of seeing Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for the people of paradise. We said, and we've spent some time on this because they are really important statements, where he actually set the path of guidance with respect to how to understand al-aqidah and how to understand the matters, especially the matters of the unseen, al-ghayb, right? Because a lot of people, different groups, have actually went astray and they deviated from the path of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah with respect to how they understand this. And, those statements, they actually said clearly, and we said these ought to be written in gold, they said clearly that they boiled down to stay guided is to actually submit to Allah Azza wa Jal and to His Prophet, Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and not to actually make your mind and your ideas and your intellect in charge of understanding the text. But rather, you actually accept them as they are, based on their apparent meaning. Whatever you understand from the text, you understand it. This is... Okay, I thought they were disconnected. You understand it that way without making your ideas and your own opinions and try to understand those texts based on that. And we said also, and this is quite important, it's actually a foundation of this deen, is that you don't go beyond what we were taught. We don't go beyond what we were taught. Because the moment you cross the borders of what we were taught in the Quran and in the Sunnah, then you are actually start talking about Allah Azza wa Jal without knowledge. Something that we were not taught, we're not supposed to go into it with our own intellect and our own mind. Because no matter how intelligent we are, and no matter how smart we are, we're going to be lost. We're going to be lost because if Allah Azza wa Jal kept it hidden from us, brothers and sisters, that's on purpose. If Allah Azza wa Jal did not teach us something, and His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam did not talk and teach us something, then there is no good in learning it. And we have no need to learn it to be able to believe in Allah Azza wa Jal the right way. We are good and we have sufficiency. We should be sufficient in what we were taught. If we go beyond that and we're not satisfied, then we are going into a territory where there's no guidance for us. It's going to be our mind and our intellect, and we're going to be lost, and we're going to be wavering, and we're not going to be talking based on guidance, on burhan from Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. We're going to start talking based on our own ideas, and this will lead the person to have a diminished tawheed. This will diminish from tawheed, and that person, he or she, will not have a pure, perfect tawheed, which is based on guidance from Allah Azza wa Jal and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he is saying in this statement, whoever seeks after that which his knowledge has been prevented from. If Allah Azza wa Jal prevented us from knowing something, will any human being be able to learn it on his own? If Allah Azza wa Jal prevented our intellect and our mind from learning something, from being able to understand something, no matter what we try, we're not going to be able to learn it. So there is no benefit, there is actually no hope in learning that which Allah Azza wa Jal kept hidden from us on purpose and for a good wisdom, right? And if we, go into it and start talking about it, then we are without guidance. We are on our own. And like I said, we actually mentioned or talked about the danger and the grave situation of talking about Allah Azza wa Jal based on ignorance, right? وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ الْقَوْلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ, saying on Allah, on behalf of Allah, without knowledge, الْقَوْلَ عَلى اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْم, is a very dangerous territory. That is why, hence, we should be satisfied and we should stop by the boundaries that Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam set for us. Whatever they taught us, we take it and we submit fully to it. Whatever they taught us, from al-ghaybiyat, from the unseen, from al-aqidah, from the belief, from even the practical deeds like as-salah, siyam, all the sharia, whatever we were taught and whatever we received and was conveyed to us, we take it as is and we submit to it fully. And we're satisfied with it. And then we don't go beyond that. We just speak based on knowledge, based on the evidence that we received from Allah Azza wa Jal and His Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Otherwise, like Imam Abu Ja'far is saying, we risk losing the perfect tawheed. We risk losing the pure and sincere tawheed, and not having, we will be deprived from the clear and pure knowledge, Safi al-Ma'rifah and Sahih al-Iman. Our Iman will not be correct, it will not be valid, it will be invalid if we do that. If we're not satisfied and we cross the boundaries, we will be deprived by Allah Azza wa Jal. And we said, brothers and sisters, the right way to reach and learn and acquire the knowledge is to actually submit to it fully, not to use our mind to be able to understand it, and whatever our minds accept, we accept, and whatever we don't accept, then we reject it. This rejection of the text is actually, we will be punished. If we reject the text, we will be punished by not being able to have a clear knowledge by Allah Azza wa Jal. So to achieve that knowledge, it is to actually not object, but submit fully and surrender to the text that Allah Azza wa Jal told us about and His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and do and act upon what we learn. And the more you act about it or based on it, the more Allah Azza wa Jal open the doors for you and teach you more. Like we said, the righteous ancestors and the scholars have actually said, and this is actually a great rule if you wish, Man amila. Follow me, brothers. Man amila, al-amal, bima alima, whoever does based on what he learned, right? Yani you apply that, awrathahu Allah, al-mirath, yani he will inherit, Allah Azza wa Jal will give him, he will inherit, he will get the hair of what alima ma lam ya'lam, ilma ma lam ya'lam. Allah will give him, will bestow on him the knowledge that he did not learn from before. Yani Allah Azza wa Jal will give him more and more knowledge, will teach him more and more, as long as you submit and you surrender and you are satisfied with it, and then you act upon it. Because why acting upon this knowledge is so important? The reason we're actually emphasizing on that, because there are a lot of people, brothers and sisters, who learn but don't apply it. And how beneficial, how good is that knowledge for you if you don't apply it? And that is why what is praiseworthy, and sometimes you may actually see in the biography of some of the scholars, is that they say this was a scholar who is alim amil. Alimun amil, or from al-ulama al-amilin, yani from the scholars who actually worked and did practice what they learned. Otherwise, there are people who learn, but they don't practice it. And it's no benefit to them. It's no good to them. On the contrary, iyadhan billah, it will be a witness against them on the day of judgment. You knew me. The piece of knowledge will say, he knew me, right? But he didn't act upon me. He didn't do according to his knowledge, to that knowledge. So it will be a witness against that person. So this is why we say, the safe path and the guided path is to actually submit to the knowledge and to actually act upon it. Then he said, Imam Abu Ja'far, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said in the 68th statement, and this is also something that we discussed last week, quickly, he said, فَيَتَذَبْذَبُ بَيْنَ الْكُفْرِ وَالْإِيمَانِ وَالتَّصْدِيقِ وَالتَّكْذِيبِ وَالْإِقْرَارِ وَالْإِنْكَارِ. So he will waver between unbelief and iman, and believing and denying, and affirmation and rejection. We said that person, this is with respect to who? He's continuing talking about the person who is not satisfied by what Allah Azza wa Jal taught us and what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us. And he insists to cross the boundary and go beyond that. He's saying if you do that, then you're going to be lost. And that loss that you're going to be in will actually make that person waver. They will be wavering between belief and disbelief. So he's not going to be an outright disbeliever. Nor will he be a believer all the time. So based on this loss that they will be in, right? And this wavering between haqq and batil, then they will be wavering. One time they will be with the believers, sometimes they will have doubts that will overtake them and will make them closer to the disbelievers. And will be wavering between believing and denying, and affirmation and rejection. And that's a very dangerous territory. That's a very dangerous thing for the person to be in, for a situation to be, because this is how Allah Azza wa Jal described who? Munafiqeen. Al-munafiqeen, the hypocrites who show different than what they actually hide in there. Allah Azza wa Jal described them, فَهُمْ فِي رَيْبِهِمْ يَتَرَدَّدُونَ. So they are in their doubts wavering. So in their doubts they waver. They waver between iman and disbelief. And this is the state of that person who will be between this and that. And then also he said, موسوسا تائها زائغا شاكا لا مؤمنا مصدقا ولا جاحدا مكذبا. He will be a person suffering from whispering, lost, doubting, neither being a true believer upon iman, nor an outright rejecter and denier. So again, he's wavering between al-kufr and al-iman, and between outright rejection and denying, and between believing in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And so this is, again, this is a very dangerous territory. And al-wajib on the person is to actually stop where Allah Azza wa Jal stopped. Yani in the Quran and in the Sunnah, Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam told us things. They told us about At-Tawheed. They told us about the oneness of Allah Azza wa Jal. They told us about His names, about His attributes. They told us about Al-Qadar, right? And they mentioned it in certain statements and in a certain way. And this is where we should stop. Going beyond that, like I said, will be dangerous territory. And we gave a great example of that is Al-Qadar. Allah Azza wa Jal described it, but we know it's the secret of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we talk about it exactly in the terms that Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger told us. Going beyond that, believe it or not, some people tried that, and they went beyond that, and they want to learn and understand fully Al-Qadar. They ended up disbelievers. Atheists. Iyadhan billah. Why? Because they reach a point where none of this makes sense to them anymore. And that is why Rasulullah ﷺ warned us and guided us. He said, وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ الْقَدَرْ فَأَمْسِكُوا. If the qadar of Allah Azza wa Jal is mentioned, then stop. Stop means stop where Allah Azza wa Jal stopped. Whatever He told us, take it and believe in it and understand it, and then you stop there. That's the boundary. Going beyond that, you're going to be lost. And you'll end up with doubts that will overwhelm you and overtake you. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is warning us against. Waswasan, and this is what the brother over here is referring to. Waswasa, there are multiple types of waswasa. But the waswasa that he is referring to in here is these ideas, whispering from a shaitan or from the soul, from the one's soul, nafs, right? That occur in one's mind, right? There are multiple types of these. There is these ideas that are too terrible and the person does not speak about them and he clear them with knowledge, with evidence from the Quran and Sunnah. And we said this is actually a sign of Iman. This is not something wrong or bad. It happens to all of us. There's nothing wrong with these happening because they do happen to everybody. And we said, as a matter of fact, the shaitan, when he gives up on misguiding a person, when he tried all the different ways he could to misguide a person, and he fails, eventually what he does is he throws those ideas into person's mind to try to sway him. And the person, if he finds them or she finds them too terrible to speak about or talk about, and based on the knowledge from Allah Azza wa Jal, he or she clears them and, doesn't settle down for them, then that's actually a sign of Iman. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us, this is actually a sign of Al-Iman. And the Sahaba, imagine the Sahaba themselves, who are the best generation, they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and they asked him alayhi salatu wasalam about those ideas. And he said, do you find them? They said, yes. He said, that's actually a sign of Iman. But what is a problem, or what is problematic, are these ideas that the person settles down with and feels tranquil with, and he's okay with them, and they start growing in their mind, right? And he's okay with them, and then they eventually overwhelm the person and take the person outside of the realm of Islam or belief. Right? And these are usually in the foundation of the deen. But if you have a doubt about a specific thing and you're trying to sincerely and trying to clear them and ask somebody, if you don't have the knowledge, seeking the knowledge from somebody to clear them, then there's absolutely no problem with that. Right? Then he said, and I think this is where we stopped last week. This is where we stopped last week. I just want to refresh so that we can go forward. Because after those statements, brothers and sisters, if you're going to notice now, after those statements, Imam Abu Ja'far, what he did, he went back, and here you're going to see in this statement, he's going back to the topic of al-ru'ya, seeing of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And the reason he's revisiting this topic after those several statements that set the path of security in your deen and in your iman is now he's trying to actually re-emphasize and clarify exactly how our belief in the seeing of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala should be. And not being distorted by some of the ideas and some of the intellect that some people have actually did with. In this statement, the 70th statement, he said, وَلَا يَصُحُّ الْإِيمَانُ بِالرُّؤْيَةِ لِأَهْلِ دَارِ السَّلَامِ لِمَنْ اعْتَبَرَهَا مِنْهُمْ بِوَهْمٍ أَوْ تَأَوَّلَهَا بِفَهْمٍ. And Iman in ru'ya, Iman in the seeing of Allah Azza wa Jal, the fact that the people of abode of peace and security will see Allah, will not be correct from those of them who takes it to be in accordance with his own mistaken idea or who misinterprets it with his own understanding. And this is what is important about it. Because, and let's take it one step at a time before I actually go, in front of myself. Notice he said, وَلَا يَصِحُّ الْإِيمَانُ بِالرُّؤْيَةِ لِأَهْلِ دَارِ الْإِيمَانِ السلام, I'm sorry. First of all, what is Dar al-Salam? Jannah. Dar al-Salam is a Jannah. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal called it as such. He said, لَهُمْ دَارُ السَّلَامِ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Surah Al-An'am, ayah 127 from Surah Al-An'am. Allah Azza wa Jal says, لهم, for the believers, لهم, for them, دار السلام عند ربهم. For them will be the home of peace with their Lord. Why is it called Dar as-Salam? Because it is the home where all types of safety and security and well-being exist over there. Because it is a place, it is a home where people will enjoy all types of salama. Hence it is called Dar as-Salam. So it is the abode where people will enjoy all types of salama, all well-being, all its types. The salama, the well-being and the safety and security in their bodies, in their soul, in their minds, in their ideas, even in their hearing. They will not hear anything that is useless or maybe harmful to their ears. Even the meaningless speech that is just waste of time and it's harmful to the ears, they will not hear it. Like Allah Azza wa Jal says in the ayah of Surah Al-Ghashiyah, لا تسمعوا فيها لاغية, where they shall neither hear harmful speech nor falsehood. So nothing, you will not hear anything in Dar as-Salam, in Jannah, anything that will be harmful to you or may cause any or any harm or any inconvenience or annoyance. So even the sounds, even the voices and the sounds that you hear in Al-Jannah will all be pleasing and will all be, they're not going to be harmful, but rather they will be pleasing to the person who hears them in Al-Jannah. And even their greeting, even the greeting of the people of Al-Jannah, what is it? Their Tahiyyah as-Salam. So it is Dar as-Salam, because the people in it will enjoy all types of salama, and even their greeting is salam. Tahiyyatuhum fiha salam. That is why it is called Dar as-Salam. Right? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all among them, among its people. Then, so he said, now we understand what Dar as-Salam is. He said, وَلَا يَصِحُّ الْإِيمَانُ بِالرُّؤْيَةِ. And iman in this ru'ya, the fact that the people of abode of peace and security will see Allah, will not be correct. When Imam Abu Ja'far is saying that their iman will not be correct, that means that al-iman in this ru'ya is a wajib. Al-iman, this also means that al-iman in this ru'ya is a wajib, because he's saying if they distort it, it will not be valid belief from them. That means it is something that we must believe in. That al-iman in ru'yatullah tabaraka wa ta'ala, that seeing Allah Azza wa Jal, believing in that is a wajib. It's not just, sunnah or, it's better to believe in it. It's a wajib because Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned it in the Quran. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. And also it is mentioned, as we said, in many, many ahadith, tens of ahadith that reach the level of at-tawatur. So believing in this ru'ya is a wajib. This is what we understand from this statement. So al-iman in this ru'ya is a wajib and is a fard upon every believer. But he's saying that if you distort its meaning, if you don't believe in it the right way, then it will be invalid. So it's not a matter of just saying, I believe in a ru'ya, in any way, shape, or form. Even if I distort the meaning, or even if I interpret it and explain it in a different way other than what Allah Azza wa Jal wants me to believe in, it's not going to be accepted from you or from that person. It's not a matter of just saying, but rather, if you don't believe in it the right way, he's saying, لا يصح. Yani this iman in al-ru'ya is not sahih. It's fasid. This iman is fasid, is invalid. And we want this belief to be sahih, to be valid, and we want to believe in this as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala wants us to believe. And this doesn't just apply to ru'ya, but it actually applies the same thing, exactly the same thing, applies to all the matters of al-iman in the matters of the unseen. All the matters of the unseen that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned to us and His Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned to us, we must believe in them. They are wajib. Belief in them is a wajib, right? And we must believe in them in exactly the way that Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to believe in it. Otherwise, that belief is invalid. لا يصح. This iman is غير صحيح unless we believe in it like Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to believe in it. So this is, like I said, it applies to all the matters of the unseen. And we must believe in them in the way that the apparent meaning of the text tells us. This belief in the unseen is a belief in the apparent meaning of the text. It is a belief in the apparent meaning of the ayah and apparent meaning of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that tell us about those matters of the unseen, like our righteous ancestors, like the Sahaba, like the Tabi'een, Tabi'at-Tabi'een, etc., like they believed in it. Whatever they received from Allah Azza wa Jal, they took it as it is. They came down to believe in it in exactly the apparent way, the apparent meaning of it, exactly as it reached them. And this is how they believed in it, without making their mind into it and trying to explain it in a different way other than what Allah Azza wa Jal wanted and His Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam wanted. They take it exactly as it is. He said, let me just change quickly the color. He said, لا يصح الإيمان. So the iman is not correct or is invalid. To who? For the one who believe in الرؤيا but based on wahm or based on تأولها بفهم. If the person understands it or takes it based on his own mistaken idea, if he actually imagined this ru'ya to be in a certain way, if a person affirms the ru'ya, says, I believe in this seeing of Allah Azza wa Jal, but means something else other than what Allah Azza wa Jal wants, Imam Abu Ja'far is saying that this is an invalid belief. It doesn't help the person. It doesn't benefit the person. Unless you believe in it exactly the way Allah Azza wa Jal wants from us. And then in the next statement, we're going to come back to this, but for a second I'm going to skip to the next statement where he said, as an evidence to this in the 71 or the 71st statement, he said, إِذْ كَانَ تَأْوِيلُ الرُّؤْيَةِ وَتَأْوِيلُ كُلِّ مَعْنًى يُضَافُ إِلَى الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ تَرْكُ التَّأْوِيلِ وَلُزُومُ التَّسْلِيمِ. Since he's saying that, don't interpret it in a different way based on your own interpretation, for it's not going to be correct. Why? Because he said the correct interpretation of the seeing and the correct interpretation, as a matter of fact, of every meaning ascribed to the Lordship of Allah Azza wa Jal is to actually believe interpreting it. Don't interpret it in your own way, but take it and understand it as it appears to mean, the apparent meaning, and to adhere to submission, luzum at-taslim that he mentioned before. So in this statement, he's saying that the right and the true explanation, understanding, at-ta'wil is to actually leave at-ta'wil altogether. Why? Because the reality of this unseen is not something that we're going to be able to understand. This ru'ya of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is in the unseen, in al-Jannah. We haven't experienced it yet. We haven't seen it. We don't know how it's going to be. So don't understand it as you want to understand it or based on your own understanding. It's from the unseen, and we have no way of understanding today how this ru'ya will be. So don't get your mind into it and start to make ta'wil or explain it in a different way. He's saying the right and the true ta'wil is to actually leave it ta'wil altogether and understand it as it is, as the apparent meaning. Because we say that the ta'wil of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, the ta'wil of the matters of the unseen, is how they will actually be in the end. What they will be when they actually happen. And this is not something that we understand today. It's not something that we are able to understand now, or our minds and our heart will be able to understand and grasp these matters of the unseen, right? Which means that the way we should understand them is based on the apparent meaning. Take them as they are, just what they appear to me, literally, And this is the right understanding. And this is the right way and the safe way of our righteous ancestors. So, لا يصح الإيمان that he mentioned in the previous statement, لا يصح الإيمان, why it is invalid? He evidenced or he proved it by saying that because the right ta'wil is to actually leave ta'wil altogether. Or any meaning that is added to the lordship of Allah Azza wa Jal, any name, any attribute, any deed, right, of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It's all matters of the unseen. It's not something that we're able to understand. So with respect to all of them, we treat them exactly the same way. All of them. All the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, we understand them in exactly the same way, which is leave it ta'wil. And like I said, we're going to come to this in a moment. And submit and surrender to the apparent meaning of the text. And this is وَعَلَيْهِ دِينُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. This is the deen of Islam. This is what the deen of the Muslim should be. It is to surrender to the apparent meaning of those matters of the unseen. And this is the safe way, and this is the way of well-being that Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger wants from us. I think this is about midway of through the halaqah. And as you know, during the winter time, just because of the long time span of the halaqah, we actually take a quick break in the middle. So we have pizzas, we have some cookies, inshallah. Let's take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back and start off with the word ta'wil. This word. This is what we're going to actually speak for quite a bit and make sure that we understand. We're going to be talking, let me use yet another color actually. We're going to be talking about this exact word, ta'awwalaha, ta'wil. Good? All right, let's grab something to eat real quick, inshallah, stretch the legs and come back.
This word,
Yeah.
ta'wil has been used in the sense of ta'bir also.
This is what we're coming, so let's not just get ahead of ourselves. I think the next half of the halaqah will be about this word. So inshallah, let's eat something and come back. We're going to talk a lot about this.
For Yusuf alayhi salam, he said
تأويل الأحاديث هذا تأويل رؤياي من قبل. All of this we're going to be talking about. Did we start?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
15 minutes?
We could not go live.
We can do that.
Could not go live.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we're going to restart in 2 minutes. Come on, brothers, if we can start heading back in. Do they have napkins? Napkins? Yeah. Or napkins? I thought they had one in here.
Napkins?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Right here.
Oh. I thought they had.
Jazakallah for yesterday. So the person who is going to inside the guide to see, it's like you're going in a minefield, and
Yeah.
you don't know where his mind.
Yeah,
He's going to take you up.
exactly. You're just going based on, darkness and loss, and you have no way to know, because you have no burhan. There's no guidance to guide you.
Yes.
You're on your own. And not only that, you're not going to be able to reach that, because Allah Azza wa Jal forbade your understanding from being able to grasp that. There's no point. You're not going to get there.
How are they going to get it?
Brother, there's one brother called me yesterday. He says he wants to give some books to some non-Muslim, some Americans, whatever. He's interested about Islam. He says he asked me for some books, but he said I don't want to give him the Quran.
I don't want to.
I don't want to give him Quran.
Okay.
He says, that's what he says. I don't want to give him Quran. I said, why? The Quran is it's a commanded thing.
Yeah.
Could be guided if he don't read Quran. He must. No, he said maybe he can understand the wrong ayah or something. He says, this is my opinion.
Well, see if he's interested in meeting. See if he's interested in meeting. We can meet with him and talk and discuss and answer any questions he might have. See when he's available. Yeah.
But I think so. Like giving Quran is most important, right?
It is, but some people may not, for whatever reason, they don't want to start there. That's fine. If he has anything, we can answer his questions. We'll start from there. So see if he's interested in meeting. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين أما بعد. So before the break we were commenting on this statement, the 71st statement, where Imam Abu Ja'far said I'm sorry, the 70th statement here. ولا يصح الإيمان بالرؤية لأهل دار السلام لمن اعتبرها منهم بوهم ideas أو تأولها بفهم تأولها from التأويل. So he's saying that, and we already commented on this, we said that, believing in seeing of Allah Azza wa Jal, but with a caveat, based on, some visualization that the person may have in their mind, right? So he start picturing in his mind that it's going to be in this way, we're going to see Allah Azza wa Jal in this fashion. He's saying that this iman in the ru'ya is invalid. That doesn't qualify you as believing in a ru'ya. That's not believing in a ru'ya. This is not what is meant by that. Or if you actually explain it, use a ta'wil to explain it, which means to explain it in a different way other than what the apparent meaning indicates. Right? You actually explain it in a different way. That it is a seeing by the heart. It's a seeing to no direction. It's a seeing that blah, 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 blah. All of these. We're saying that this is not a belief in a ru'ya. This does not qualify as, and it's not a valid iman in a ru'ya, seeing of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. We see that ta'wil is a key word in here. So let's take a look at the ta'wil and see what it means. We say that linguistically speaking, Arabic language, right? Ta'wil, it means what the matter will end up being, what it will be, right? What it will actually eventually be. We say, آل الأمر إلى كذا, يعني this is how the matter becomes, what it ends being. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal, or this is the meaning that from the ayah in Surah Al-Isra, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. And this is the ayah where Allah Azza wa Jal is guiding the believers to be straight in their measuring when they measure. وَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ إِذَا كِلْتُمْ وَزِنُوا بِالْقِسْطَاسِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. And give full measure when you measure. When you weigh, you're selling, you're buying and selling. When you weigh in full measure. And give full measure when you measure, and weigh with a balance that is straight. Don't cheat and not give people their right. That is good and better in the end. وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. Yani the end result of it, what the matter will end up being, is better for you. That's a better ending for you. And the reward that is attached to it, the end reward, is better for you. So this is a ta'wil. وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. It's a better outcome. It's a better ending for you. This is the linguistic meaning. But in the books of Ahlul Ilm, of the people of knowledge, and in the book, in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and what the scholars have used this word to, there are three different meanings of which it can come in three different contexts. The first one is when ta'wil is used to mean tafsir. Ta'wil, it means the tafsir, explaining the meaning. And this is actually what the ayah in Surah Yusuf, where, it's a long story, right? What the brothers of Yusuf did to him, and, he was separated from his parents, and it's a long story, and he went through so much, right? When eventually he was entrusted with the treasures of Misr, Egypt, right? And he was, entrusted with it, and he was in charge, and eventually his father, right, learned about the fact that he's alive, and, he got his younger brother as well. Then they came to him, right? What did he say to his father? Because remember, he saw a dream where the stars are making sujood to him, and, he said that there is a meaning to that dream. What did he say? He said, هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ مِنْ قَبْلِ. This is the tafsir. Ta'wil, ru'yay, yani tafsir ru'yay. Yani this is the meaning of my dream that I saw years back. This is the explanation of it. That Allah Azza wa Jal, in the end, he actually made good to him and eventually became, the one in charge and all of that. So the literal English translation of this ayah, and he said, "O my father, this is the interpretation of my dream aforetime. My Lord has made it come true. He was indeed good to me. And when he took me out of the prison and brought you out of the Bedouin life, after Shaitan has sown enmity between me and my brothers, certainly my Lord is the most courteous and kind unto whom he will. Truly only he is the all-knowing, all-wise." So the point here, هذا تأويل رؤياي, يعني هذا تفسير رؤياي. So this is the explanation of what I saw in the dream. Now it came true, and Allah Azza wa Jal made good to me, and this is the explanation of it. So this is the first meaning of at-ta'wil. At-ta'wil is a tafsir. That's the first context. And by the way, a lot of the people of tafsir, I mean tafsir al-Quran, they actually use this meaning of at-ta'wil. For example, a lot of different mufassirin, including Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, the Imam Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, he actually uses this meaning of at-ta'wil quite often in his book Tafsir of al-Quran. He says, people of at-ta'wil, ahl at-ta'wil, yani ahl at-tafsir. He used this term quite a bit, right, to refer to them. He says, this is the saying of ahl at-ta'wil, yani ahl at-tafsir, tafsir al-Quran. So this is the first meaning. The second meaning of at-ta'wil, it can come and means the reality of something. And this could be in the context of al-akhbar, plural of al-khabar, the news that we receive, whatever Allah Azza wa Jal, whatever His Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam tell us about things to happen, right? Ta'wil al-akhbar is actually the reality of how they will happen. Yani when they happen, when people see them happening, when they actually happen, right? How they will happen in reality. This is the ta'wil of these events. We call these are what the reality of those news will be. For example, talking about Yawm al-Qiyamah, talking about al-Jannah, talking about al-Nar, what they will be, right? This is the ta'wil. Or it can also have to do with al-amr and al-nahi, the order and the prohibition. And we're going to talk about this in a few seconds. With respect to al-akhbar, like I said, it means ta'wil al-akhbar, the reality of how these news will materialize, how they will happen. And this is the meaning of the ayah where Allah Azza wa Jal is saying in the ayah of Surah Al-A'raf. In Surah Al-A'raf, Allah Azza wa Jal is challenging the disbelievers and telling them about the events that will happen on the day of resurrection, Yawm al-Qiyamah. After talking about all of that and what will happen and what people will see, then he said about those disbelievers, he said, هَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا تَأْوِيلَهُ يَوْمَ يَأْتِي تَأْوِيلُهُ يَقُولُ الَّذِينَ نَسُوهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ قَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُ رَبِّنَا بِالْحَقِّ. Await they just the final fulfillment of the event? Which event? The day of resurrection, Yawm al-Qiyamah. So do they just wait till it actually materializes and happen? هَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا تَأْوِيلَهُ. Do they wait except it's happening? When it happens on the day of event, that day of resurrection, يَوْمَ يَأْتِي تَأْوِيلُهُ, when the day of resurrection is finally fulfilled, those who neglected it before will say, verily the messengers of our Lord did come with the truth. Meaning, what they told us will happen is exactly true. This is what happens on that day. They will say, the disbelievers who neglected it and did not believe in what the messenger said, they will say, this is exactly what the messengers told us. They told us the truth, but we disbelieved it. We disbelieved in it. Verily, the messengers of our Lord did come with the truth. Now, are there any intercessors for us that they may intercede on our behalf? Well, it's too late. It will be too late. Way too late. Right? But the point is, هَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا تَأْوِيلًا. Do they just wait when it actually materializes, when it will actually happen and they will see it, right? And everything that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned before in the several ayat before in Surah Al-A'raf, from the news about the day of resurrection, from the news about Al-Jannah, paradise, and the news about hellfire, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So this is the reality of what those news will how they will happen in reality, and people will see them. In other words, it's their occurrence. They're happening, right? When they happen, they're happening, right? So the ta'wil, now we can say the ta'wil of every matter of the unseen is nothing but its occurrence. So ta'wil yawm al-qiyamah is the occurrence of yawm al-qiyamah. Ta'wil al-jannah is actually seeing al-jannah and inspecting it, seeing by your own eyes, to actually see the al-jannah, and seeing al-nar, wal-'iyadhu billah, the hellfire. This is the ta'wil. So ta'wil al-jannah is the reality of al-jannah. Ta'wil al-nar is the reality of al-nar, of the hellfire, wal-'iyadhu billah. So these news that Allah Azza wa Jal told us about from the unseen, from the unseen matters, their ta'wil is the reality of them, how they will happen. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal said in the ayah, and this is something we mentioned before, the ayah of Surah Ali Imran, for those who see, stopping at وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and nobody knows the meaning save Allah. Those, because there are two qira'ah. Remember, we mentioned this before, just to refresh your memory. There are two qira'ah, and both of them are sahiha. There are two qira'ah of this ayah, and both of them are mutawatara, and both of them are sahiha. Some of the qurra, they see the stopping at there. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Then they start, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّ بِهِ. So if you stop there, this means وَمَا يَعْلَمُ, nobody knows its ta'wil, yani how they will happen, those unseen matters, except Allah, obviously, because nobody, the reality of those, except Allah. So this is in reference to the unseen, the matters of the unseen. Some other qurra, they actually recite it, and like I said, it's still sahiha. You can say, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. Yani, who knows the ta'wil of those things? Allah, as well as الرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, the firmly footed people, scholars in knowledge. In that case, ta'wil, it means what? Tafsir. Tafsir al-Quran, tafsir al-ayat, the apparent meaning. Yes, الرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, they know the apparent meaning of al-ayat. In addition to Allah Azza wa Jal, they do know that. Don't they? Yeah. And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he made dua to Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, he made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, he said, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, make him comprehend the religion and make him and teach him at-ta'wil, yani tafsir al-Quran. And this dua of the Prophet ﷺ, none of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ is rejected. It was answered. And he became Habr al-Ummah. He became one of the most knowledgeable scholars of the Ummah in the meaning of al-ayat, of al-Quran. He said, he used to say, I am among the ones who understand all of the Quran, all of ta'wil. I am from the people of ta'wil al-Quran, yani tafsir al-Quran. And Mujahid, one of the great scholars of al-Tabi'in, he actually studied al-Quran ayah, each ayah, with Abdullah ibn Abbas. And Abdullah ibn Abbas taught him the meaning of every single ayah of the Quran. Why? Because he knows that ta'wil al-Quran is tafsir al-Quran, the meaning. So if we refer to ta'wil as tafsir al-Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal, as well as the scholars, they know it. But if we refer to ta'wil, meaning the reality of how the unseen, events of the unseen will happen, only Allah Azza wa Jal knows that. In that case, we would stop where? وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. And then we restart. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّ بِهِ. Those firmly footed in the knowledge, they believe in all of it. Clear? Right. So this is the meaning, this is the second context of al-ta'wil. Al-ta'wil, it means the occurrence of the events of the unseen, yani the reality of them. When they happen, when people see them, this is the ta'wil. Yani what Allah Azza wa Jal told us will happen, well, this is how it will happen, when it happens. This is the ta'wil al-akhbar. So the reality of the events of the day of resurrection, the reality of the events, or not the events, of the Jannah, of the paradise, of the hellfire, of the sifat, the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. We say Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful. How is he merciful? We don't know. What is the reality of that attribute of mercy? We don't know, but we understand the meaning of it. We know what mercy means, right? Likewise, we can say the same thing to the rest of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Likewise, we don't know the reality of paradise now, but we will know it afterward. Likewise, the reality of hellfire, we don't know it. Nobody knows it, but we will know it afterward when we are resurrected. Or for example, the statuses of people on, after they are resurrected, the bridge, the sirat, all of this, how we see Allah Azza wa Jal in paradise, all of this, the reality of it is, we know it afterward. And this is the ta'wil. When we say, when they happen, is the ta'wil. So the reality of all of these things, the matters of the unseen, are all only known to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But we believe that they have a meaning and we understand their meaning. But we don't know how they will be, the reality and how they will be. Clear? Because this is only something that Allah Azza wa Jal knows. What's also interesting with respect to ta'wil, and to emphasize more, or maybe to make it clearer more, that we don't know the reality. We understand the meaning, but we don't know the reality of them, of the matters of the unseen. Abdullah ibn Abbas, we just spoke about him, right? Abdullah ibn Abbas, Turjuman al-Quran, the translator of the Quran. He is the one who knew the meanings of the ayat of the Quran. He once said, while commenting on the ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا مِنْ ثَمَرَةٍ رِزْقًا قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. This ayah, where Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, and give glad tidings to the believer and the good doers, that they will be entered into paradise, where beneath which are rivers flowing, and they will be provided by fruits. Thamar. If I say fruits, doesn't every one of you understand what fruits mean? We all know what fruits mean, right? Even in the Quran, specific fruits are mentioned. For example, pomegranate, right? Dates is mentioned in the Quran. We all understand what that means, right? In the ayah, the same terms are being used. Thimar, thamar. كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا مِنْ ثَمَرَةٍ رِزْقًا قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. They will say, this is similar to what we were provided in this dunya, in this life. He commented, he said, لَيْسَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ مِنْ دُنْيَاكُمْ إِلَّا الْأَسْمَاءِ. There's nothing in Jannah from your dunya except the names. The names are similar. Fruits. River, there will be rivers in Jannah. Trees, there will be trees in Jannah. Houses and palaces, there will be houses and palaces in Jannah. The same name. Are they the same reality? They're not the same reality. And that is why Ibn Abbas, he's saying that you have nothing in Jannah from this dunya except the names. The names are similar, but the reality and how is totally different. We have pomegranate in here, we will have pomegranate in there. We have honey in here, we will have honey in Jannah. We have wine in here, although it's evil and its consequences are evil, and we have also wine in Jannah, but it's all good. It's wine, but it doesn't remember the wine of this dunya, which have a lot of evil in it, and it leads to only evil. But in Jannah, it will be actually very tasty. لَذَّةٌ لِلشَّارِبِينَ. It will be pleasure for those who drink it. And it's all good. It's better than the wine in here. But we have also honey, right? And water and rivers, etc., etc. So the names are there's only a similarity in the name, but the realities are completely different. So what I'm trying to say is that whenever Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the matters of the unseen, we know the meaning. Ar-Rahmah, we know the meaning of Ar-Rahmah. We know the meaning of hearing, Sama'. We know the meaning of Al-Basar, right? But we don't know the reality of that. And we don't know how. But we know when Allah Azza wa Jal says, أنا السميع البصير ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. We understand what السميع and what البصير means, but we don't know the reality. Right. With respect to, so this is with respect to the news. Ta'wil al-akhbar is actually when they happen, the reality of them and when they happen, what they will actually, how they will happen. Ta'wil al-amr wal-nahi, ta'wil of the orders and the prohibitions, is actually to comply with them. So ta'wil al-amr is to actually do it. Do the orders of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Ta'wil al-nahi is to refrain from doing the prohibitions. This is a ta'wil. And this is this is actually the meaning of the ayah of Surah Al-Nisa. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u al-rasula wa ulil amri minkum. Fa in tanaza'tum fi shay'in farudduhu ila Allah wa al-rasul in kuntum tu'minuna billahi wal yawm al-akhir. Dhalika khayrun wa ahsanu ta'wila. All who you believe, obey Allah and obey the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and those of you who are in authority, those of you Muslims who are in authority, and if you differ in anything amongst yourself, refer it to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If you believe in Allah and in the last day, if you dispute in anything, if you have disagreement, then go back to the orders and the prohibitions of Allah Azza wa Jal. See what Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger judged. Go back to their judgment. That is better and more suitable for final determination. أحسن تأويلا. Yani it is a better ending. By what? By complying with the orders, by doing them, by actually carrying them out, and by refraining from the prohibitions. So ta'wil al-amr is to do it. Right? Ta'wil al-amr bil-salah is to actually pray. Ta'wil al-amr bil-siyam is to actually fast. Ta'wil al-nahi an shurb al-khamr is to actually refrain from drinking wine. So ta'wil al-nahi is to actually refrain from it, and ta'wil al-amr is to actually do it. In addition to that, from the ta'wil is also to, included in that is the end result of it. What is the end result of complying with the orders and the prohibitions? Recompense, reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. If you carry out the orders, Allah Azza wa Jal will reward you. Likewise, if you refrain from the prohibitions, Allah Azza wa Jal will reward you. So ta'wil al-amr wa nahi is to comply with them. You do the orders and you refrain from the prohibitions, and you know that there is an end result for this. There is a consequence, recompense. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal will reward you for complying with His orders and His prohibitions. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the second meaning. So now we talk about two meanings of ta'wil. The first one is tafsir. Ta'wil is a tafsir. That's the first meaning. The second meaning, ta'wil al-akhbar, is how they will happen. The reality of the events. And with respect to the orders and the prohibitions, is actually to comply with them. The third one, and this is actually the most important one, not because it is most important, but this is what actually we are interested in with respect to the statement of Imam Abu Ja'far. And I'll tell you in a second why we are emphasizing on this. The third meaning of a ta'wil, when you say ta'wil, is to actually, instead of explaining the text by the apparent meaning of it, you actually use another meaning, possible meaning to explain it, other than the apparent meaning. Given there is an indication that the apparent meaning is not what is meant from the text, but rather another possible meaning. And we call this indication, we call it hujjah. There is a hujjah, or we call it qarina. Yani there is a proof, there is an evidence that indicates that in this particular case, it is not the apparent meaning that is intended from the text, whether an ayah or a hadith, right? But rather, it is another meaning. This ta'wil is correct. And the scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they said it is correct, given one condition. That it is used in the correct way, meaning there is an indication that truly proves that what Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, meant, or His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam meant, is not the apparent meaning, but some other meaning that is possible from the words. That the words can have that meaning. But there should be an indication, qarina, or an evidence, hujjah, that proves that the apparent meaning that comes to the mind is not what is intended, but rather another meaning. This is, brothers and sisters, what the groups of misguidance, the misguided group, the different groups who actually deviated from Aqidah Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, this is their window that they sneak through to actually distort the meaning of these ayat or these ahadith that talk about the unseen, the matters of the unseen. They call it ta'wil, but in reality it is twisting and it is misrepresentation. Even I dare say it is distortion, outright distortion. Yani they're actually explaining it in a different way than what Allah Azza wa Jal wanted from this. So they say Ru'yatullah Azza wa Jal is not by the eyes, it is by the heart, for example, or it is to a no direction, or it is some other way or means of seeing Allah Azza wa Jal. We say this does not make you believe in that ru'yah. This is not believing in ru'yah. Like Imam Abu Ja'far said, لا يصح الإيمان. This is not a correct belief in seeing Allah Azza wa Jal if you say that I believe in it, but based on a specific interpretation, تأولها بفهم, based on your own understanding, you misinterpret it, or like I said, you actually even distort it, and then they call it ta'wil. So this tahrif, they call it ta'wil, while it is actually tahrif, distortion and twisting of the meanings of the text. And this way of sneaking into through ta'wil, they've used it across the board. So they went across the board on all the ayat and the hadith that talk about the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, and they distorted their meaning. For example, they came across the ayat that talk about the face of Allah Azza wa Jal, wajhullah, and they distorted it as this is in reference to Allah Azza wa Jal Himself. Or they came across the ayat that talks about the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal, and they attributed to His power. Or they said this is the meaning, the power of Allah Azza wa Jal, qudratullah. Or they came across the ayat of Rahmah, and they actually distorted it to mean His bestowing upon His servants. Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful. They said it means that He bestows upon His servants. Why? Because they imagine that mercy inherently is weakness. They said when the person is merciful with others, it is an inherent weakness in that person. And iyadha billah, Allah Azza wa Jal is not weak. So we can't describe Him as merciful, Rahim. Like Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim from the beginning of the Quran. We say, this means that it is His bestowing in'am, ni'am upon His servants. This is what merciful means. Likewise, they made ta'wil of rida, pleasure. They said, no. This is not a befitting attribute to Allah Azza wa Jal. Rida means that this is that it is knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal that He is approving of something. So you see that they went through this, they sneaked through this door or window of ta'wil to distort the meaning of all of these ayat according to their own understanding. And by doing so, like I said, it's more that like distortion more than ta'wil. This is no ta'wil. And this is not what Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah actually say with respect to that ta'wil. So going back to what Imam Abu Ja'far said, you notice in this statement, 71st statement, he said, he's saying that this is what the ta'wil that he's referring to. He's saying that this distortion of the meaning is wrong. Why? Because he's saying actually ta'wil in the matters of the unseen is not to do any ta'wil. إذ كان تأويل الرؤية وتأويل كل معنى يضاف إلى الربوبية ترك التأويل. Since the correct interpretation, notice, the correct interpretation of the seeing and the correct interpretation of every meaning ascribed to the Lordship. Now, every meaning ascribed to the Lordship in other ways is a reference to what? Matters of the unseen. Because all the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal are ascribed to Allah Azza wa Jal, meanings that are ascribed to Allah Azza wa Jal. When you say Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful, it's a meaning that is added to Allah Azza wa Jal. He's a merciful. He's all hearing. He's all seeing. All these attributes are meanings ascribed to the Lordship, to Allah Azza wa Jal. The same thing applies to all of them. He's saying the correct interpretation of this is to leave interpreting them. To begin with, don't interpret them based on your own understanding, like these people are doing. The correct and what is meant and what is acceptable shar'an is don't do interpretation, because these are matters of the unseen. You have no way of knowing them. Don't interpret them based on your own ideas and understanding, but rather understand them or understand them exactly how they appear, the meaning, the original meaning of the apparent meaning, and adhere to submission, which is something that he mentioned, which is something that he mentioned before. So the foundation, and here's the summary that we need to come up with. Brothers and sisters, the foundation with respect to the belief in the matters of the unseen is to understand them based on the apparent meaning. There is absolutely no ta'wil in this area. Absolutely no ta'wil. There is no ta'wil because we don't understand how they will be. When we don't understand how they will be, how can we actually revert to another meaning? We don't know how Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful. We don't know how Allah Azza wa Jal will be seen in paradise. How we will see Allah Azza wa Jal. Don't get your mind into it and start coming up with ideas and then distort the meaning and say this is not befitting to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So they're not using evidence, they're not using an indication, a true indication for this ta'wil to be correct. طيب. What they said, why did they actually resort? Seeing Allah Azza wa Jal in paradise. Ru'yatullah, which he talked many statements before. This is Brother Yusuf before you came. Remember he actually, after talking about the ru'ya, and he said, وَالرُّؤْيَةُ حَقٍّ. Remember that statement? Very clear statement. He said, وَالرُّؤْيَةُ حَقٍّ لِأَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ بِلَا كَيْفٍ وَبِلَا إِحَاطٍ. Remember that statement? Right. So he first founded that belief that people of paradise, it is the truth, haqq, that they will see their Lord without grasping Him and without us knowing how. And then he gave several statements about the way of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, how they understand these texts, and the correct way and the safe way, right? Salama in the deen is to actually surrender and submit to the text, whether in the Quran or in the Sunnah, and not to get into this with your own understanding and idea. Now he's going back to that ru'ya and applying that and what it means, how we should actually believe in it, what is valid and what is invalid. Because like I said, some people will say, but we believe in the ru'ya, but with a caveat. And we're saying this is invalid. This is not belief in the ru'ya. La yasah iman. It's not, if you don't believe in it the right way, that's not an acceptable belief in a ru'ya, in seeing Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So, what they're saying in here, right? Why did they actually make it ta'wil? So this ta'wil that we said is actually to not explain with the apparent meaning, but rather with another possible meaning, right? This is how they made ta'wil of a ru'ya of Ahl al-Jannah, of the people of paradise, of seeing their Lord Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. What they said is actually, if we approve or if we affirm that the seeing will be by the eyes, with a vision, they said, notice, this is now their argument. What they said is, well, wait a minute, this necessitates, in their mind, now, they're saying this necessitates that this is a drawing a picture of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, because how can you see something unless you actually have a like visualization of it? And this also necessitates that it is in a specific direction, because you're looking in a direction. Also, this necessitates that Allah Azza wa Jal in front of you, in front of the eyes. Otherwise, how can they be looking at something? So they're going to be looking at something, that something has to be in front of them. They said all of this is necessitated by, if we say that Allah Azza wa Jal will be seen by the eyes, vision. Right? So they said all of this is necessitated. And if it is necessitated, this will make Allah Azza wa Jal similar to His creation. This will actually draw similarity between Allah Azza wa Jal and His creation. They said if we believe in that, if we affirm Ru'yatullah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in that fashion, it necessitates all of this. It necessitates that we actually looking in a direction to Allah Azza wa Jal. It necessitates that we're looking at a body. We're now giving a body to Allah Azza wa Jal, and that He is in front of us. And all of this will actually draw similarity between Allah Azza wa Jal and His creation, and that is not possible. So this meaning is not correct. And then they distorted the meaning. We say, your argumentation is wrong all along, from the very beginning. The result that you came up with is actually wrong because the way you started, and the argument that you started with, it's all wrong. Why it's all wrong? It's all wrong because what they actually did, they went exactly what the Imam Abu Ja'far has warned against, going beyond what the text says. Remember in the statement he said, don't go beyond. Be satisfied with what Allah Azza wa Jal taught us and what His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us, and don't go beyond that. This is exactly what they did. Why? What they actually did, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to actually build the methodology in my mind so that I make sure that you understand it correctly. What they actually did, they went beyond what the text says. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Faces will be radiant, right? Why? Because it is looking at their Lord, at the Lord. Is there anywhere in that ayah, or those two ayat, anything that says about the reality of that seeing, or how that seeing will be? Nothing at all. Nothing at all in the ayat. All the ayah is saying is that the faces will be looking at their Lord. This is the apparent meaning. And that's the meaning that we can understand. We understand what it means that we'll be looking at it. How the reality of that looking is not mentioned in the ayah. That's not something that you benefit from that ayah, that you learn from that ayah, or that the ayah indicates the reality of that seeing. Is there anywhere? Nowhere. Does it state or does it indicate how we will be looking at Allah Azza wa Jal? At a direction, not a direction, all of this argumentation. There is nowhere. This is not something that you actually benefit from these ayat. So they actually added a meaning, extra meanings based on their own representation of it. They added more meanings that you can actually learn from these ayat. They went beyond what is specified in the ayah, and then that created some kind of visualization in their minds. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, we cannot do this. Why? Because now we're drawing similarity with the servants. We're drawing now similarity between Allah Azza wa Jal and the servants. Then we will say that this is not the meaning, the intended meaning, but rather it is another meaning, and they made ta'wil. So they actually explained this ru'ya by something else, not a vision by the eyes. We say you were wrong from the very beginning, because every ayah, every matter of the unseen can have three different meanings related to it. There is the apparent meaning that we can all understand. There is the reality of it, and there is the how it will happen. Both of these two are only known to Allah Azza wa Jal. None of the ayat and none of the hadith, in other words, the nusus, shar'iyyah, none of the ayat and none of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that have to do with the unseen, the matters of the unseen, tell us about the reality or how. That's not something we learn. We will find out later. We will find out on the day of judgment. So for example, the reality, ta'wil, yawm al-qiyamah, ta'wil of the day of resurrection, we will find out when we are resurrected. Now, from the ayat that talk about Yawm al-Qiyamah and the statuses of people, doesn't tell us the reality of exactly how it will be. So that's not something that we learn from the ayah. So why are you resorting? The question becomes, why are you resorting to a ta'wil, as you say, when we don't actually know the reality of it? We're not saying that it will happen in a specific way. So this evidence that you're using to run away from this imagined reality and imagined meaning, perfect meaning, is wrong. It's not an evidence, and we don't need to do that. And what is even more interesting is actually that these very same people, there are a lot of groups, who actually affirmed 7 or 8 attributes that they say these are the main and foundation attributes that they affirm to Allah Azza wa Jal, and then they actually made ta'wil of all of the remaining attributes to one of these 7. So they mapped to one of these. They, for example, affirmed the attribute of al-Qudrah, capability, power of Allah Azza wa Jal. They affirmed the attribute of al-Irada, will of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. They affirmed, for example, the attribute of life, al-Hayat. They say Allah Azza wa Jal is Hayy. So, Hayat is one of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? Knowledge, al-ilm, ilmullah. They affirmed that. And several others. 7 or 8 with difference among the different groups. They said we affirm those. But when it comes to the other attributes and the other matters of the unseen, they actually make ta'wil of each one of them to one of these 7 or 8. The question becomes, why did you affirm these 7 or 8 but not the rest? They all should be treated in exactly the same way. If you affirm these 7 and 8, then you should affirm the others. If affirming those 7 or 8 did not draw similarity between Allah Azza wa Jal and His servants, the same thing holds true to the rest of them. So you should be able to affirm them. And if you did not affirm the others and had to resort to the ta'wil, because affirming them you claim actually draw similarity, then the same thing, you shouldn't have affirmed those 7 and you should make ta'wil for them as well. You follow? Is that clear? Because we say with respect to the topic of al-sifat, attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, with respect to the matters of the unseen, they are all the same. The argument is exactly the same. The way we understand them is exactly the same. How we understand that Allah Azza wa Jal has a will, iradatullah. How we understand that Allah Azza wa Jal has ilm, ilmullah, knowledge. How Allah Azza wa Jal has life, a perfect life. Right? Allah Hayy. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت. When you affirm that Allah Azza wa Jal has life and that He is alive, but the humans are alive as well and they have life, yet the life of Allah Azza wa Jal is a perfect life, deficiency free, defect free, while our life is full of defects. The same name, yet you affirmed it and you did not see that this is drawing similarity. Why don't you do the same thing across the board? Likewise, you affirm all the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal and the attributes of His deeds, that He descends, that, for example, He has mercy, that, for example, Allah Azza wa Jal has a face befitting His majesty. When we say that He has a face, it's not we're drawing a face in a specific way. We're not visualizing that in our minds or depicting it in a certain way or saying that it is in a specific way or how it is, how Allah Azza wa Jal has a face. We say that Allah Azza wa Jal said He has a face. It means that it is a face befitting His majesty. We don't know the reality of that face. We don't know how, but we understand the meaning of it. It's not similar to the face of the humans. Like al-ilm, like al-irada, like life. As we affirm these, we should be able to affirm the rest of them. No difference whatsoever. So to finish this argument and to finish this actually discussion, is to say that you started by adding a meaning to the ayah that is not in it, that cannot be understood from it. And when you added this and you went beyond the text and added this meaning, this made you having to resort to making a ta'wil. And we said you didn't have to go that far. إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. It is looking at their Lord. It doesn't say reality of that nazar, of that seeing or ru'ya, nor does it say how. So don't depict how. Don't imagine in your mind and in your intellect the reality of that seeing and that it necessitates this or it necessitates that. This cannot be inferred or learned from the ayah. Neither from any of the 30 plus ahadith al-mutawatara from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that affirm beyond the hint of doubt that the people of paradise will be looking at Allah Azza wa Jal. None of these ahadith tells us the reality of that seeing, nor does it tell us how the people of paradise will be looking at Allah Azza wa Jal. Don't go there. And then resort to ta'wil, which is, like I said, in this meaning, which is the third meaning. Ta'wil is to actually explain a text with a meaning other than the apparent meaning, a meaning possible meaning, other than the apparent meaning. We said this is correct if there is an indication, qarina, that indicates that this is the meaning that is intended, not the apparent meaning. And Imam Abu Ja'far actually made it very clear that with the case of the unseen, with respect to the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, with respect to the ru'ya of Allah Azza wa Jal, the true ta'wil is to leave it ta'wil. It cannot get any easier, brothers and sisters, does it? SubhanAllah, wallah, it's very simple. Sometimes, wallah, I gotta be very frank with you. Sometimes when I'm preparing for this, I feel so... I don't want to say overwhelmed. I feel just, so pitiful that I have to go through all of these argumentation to prove a simple point. Wallahi, if everybody submit to this, it would make all of our lives so easy. It's so easy to say, this is what Allah Azza wa Jal said. I understand it literally as Allah Azza wa Jal said. This is what the Sahaba did. This is what the Tabi'een did. This is what Tabi' At-Tabi'een did. This is what all the A'immat al-Islam across all the board, this is what they did. They understood it exactly how it was conveyed to them. أَمِرُّوهَا كَمَا جَاءَتْ. Take it and believe in it and understand it literally with the apparent meaning as you received it, and submit and surrender to it. Don't go beyond that. Alhamdulillah, it's so simple. So a golden rule is what the Imam Abu Ja'far is saying. The correct interpretation is to leave interpreting it. Full stop. Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Oh Allah, we actually worship you by believing. We worship you, oh Allah, by believing that the people of paradise will be looking at you with their eyes, vision. That's it. And full stop. This is what we know. We don't go beyond that. Because if we go beyond that, we are saying on Allah based on ignorance. نقول على الله بغير علم. We have no knowledge beyond that. Beyond that, how it will be, Allahu A'lam. Somebody asks you, what is the reality of that vision? How it will be? Allahu A'lam. I don't know. What I was taught is that it will be looking at their Lord. The eyes, the faces. It will be looking at their Lord. That's what I know, and that's what I believe, and that's what I surrender to and I submit to. I don't get into this whole business of interpreting, of ta'wil, making ta'wil, and trying to distort the meaning. And I say this is tafsir when it's tahrif, it's distortion and twisting of the text with a meaning that cannot be inferred from the text. It's that simple. And he finished by saying, وَعَلَيْهِ دِينُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Alhamdulillah. This is the deen of Muslim. Upon this rests the religion of Islam. To submit to it as it appears to be. No ta'wil. Ta'wil al-shar'i is to leave it ta'wil. What is wanted from us, ta'wil, what is acceptable ta'wil shar'an, is not to make ta'wil in the matters of the unseen. No ta'wil. We understand them as they are, and we submit, لزوم التسليم, we submit to Allah Azza wa Jal, and this is what the deen of Muslimin is. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. I would like to stop here, inshallah, and in those few remaining minutes, I would like to open the door for any questions or clarification, if there is any.
So I think this is perhaps the most important topic we have covered, because this is where the Ummah is divided.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
So now I'm going to give you 3 examples.
Three
examples.
Allahu Akbar.
The example.
Let's take it one at a time.
The example that you gave is a clear, unseen thing. But I want to give you something like one person said, وَفَضَيْنَاهُ ذِكْرٍ عَظِيمٍ, and he said that this is Hussein radiallahu anhu. He's coming up with something on his own. This is completely false, we understand that. And then the other person said that, what was the other word you mentioned?
Qarina.
Like references, right? You look for references somewhere else to interpret that.
Ta'wil.
So for ta'wil, what he said that نستعين بالصبر والصلاة إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. So there is nasta'in used in both places. So since we can use salah and sabr as a means of seeking help, we can also. But the awliya are better than the salah and the sabr. And Allah also used iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in for himself, to seek help.
Let's take it one at a time, because I'm afraid we may run out of time. So let's actually answer one at a time.
The question is, how do we find out that this person is not adding by himself?
Let me address the first question that you have. Hopefully we have time, inshallah. But the first question the brother is asking is, he heard it apparently from somebody saying that the ayah, remind me, barakallahu fiqh, which surah is this? وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. When Allah Azza wa Jal is talking about Ismail, ibn Ibrahim alayhim as-salam. Right? When Ibrahim, the story of Ibrahim, when he saw in the dreams that he is slaughtering his own son, and obviously we know that the dreams of the messengers are wahy. So he immediately, without any shake or any the hint of disobedience, he actually asked his son, and he said, "Do what you are ordered." And he went to actually slaughter his own son, right? But then Allah Azza wa Jal rewarded Ibrahim and Ismail alayhim as-salam. He rewarded both of them for their absolute obedience to their Lord, even if it meant slaughtering his own son. And for the patience of Ismail, he was going to be slaughtered in the end. So he rewarded both of them, right, by actually sacrificing an animal instead of Ismail. And the ayah that actually tells us this, وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. Which surah? Safa. Barakallahu fiqh. طيب. So somebody said actually this is in reference, this dhibh, the sacrifice, is not the animal that Allah Azza wa Jal sacrificed instead of Ismail, but rather this is a reference to Al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. That they're saying, Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, dhibh azim. This is a great sacrifice. It cannot be in reference to an animal. An animal you wouldn't address, or you wouldn't actually describe it as a great sacrifice, right? It must be somebody with a great value. And he's saying that the actual sacrifice, and I don't know how they actually drew that relationship. He's saying the actual sacrifice for Ismail is actually Al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Regardless if it makes sense or not, whenever we explain Al-Quran, right? And by the way, subhanAllah, now as I'm thinking about the answer, this is a topic that is so important. How we make tafsir al-Quran. And I may consider actually doing a lecture on the first Friday when we start, inshallah. This usul tafsir al-Quran. There is usul. It's not a game. It's not a joke how you explain al-Quran. It's not everybody just put their own ideas and this is what the meaning of this ayah, because that's serious. This is what Allah Azza wa Jal is saying, and when you say that this is the meaning of the ayah, you are affirming that this is what Allah Azza wa Jal intended as a meaning of that ayah. And that's a very serious business. Very serious business. If a person is belying upon Allah Azza wa Jal, that's a very serious matter. قول على الله بغير علم, again. So there is usul for this tafsir. The question that we have for that person, right? Respectfully, did any of al-mufassirin, starting from al-sahaba, because some people by the way, mistakenly think, that the meaning of the ayat are things that the scholars across the time actually came up with. That this is the meaning of this ayah and this is the meaning of that ayah. And we say that's absolutely wrong. Rasulullah ﷺ explained this Quran, and the Sahaba understood or learned the meanings of those ayat from Rasulullah ﷺ. All of this has been actually conveyed to us authentically. Like the ahadith, the meaning of these ayat has been, like we just said, Abdullah ibn Abbas, whom Rasulullah ﷺ made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal to teach him al-ta'wil, meaning al-tafsir. Remember? Rasulullah ﷺ made dua to Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, Allahumma faqihhu fi d-din. Oh Allah, make him comprehend the deen. وَعَلِّمْهُ التَّأْوِيل, and teach him al-ta'wil. In this sense, we said that this means the tafsir al-Quran. He knew the meaning of every ayah. And he taught it to Mujahid, one of the tabi'een, one of the great tabi'een. So this understanding of the ayat has been inherited like the rest of the knowledge from one generation to the other. The Sahaba conveyed the meaning of the ayat to tabi'een, and the tabi'een learned the meanings from them, and then they conveyed it to the next generation. It kept going and going and going and going. It's not like they only preserved the letters and the words of the Quran alone, but rather the meaning as well. So what they preserved for us, and Allah Azza wa Jal preserved this Quran, not just picture, sentences and words, but rather also preserve the meaning. Otherwise, how is it guiding? The Quran is the most guiding speech on earth. If the meaning of it was not preserved, it wouldn't be guiding. Just letters and sentences and ayat. From the preservation of the Quran is that the meaning of it was preserved. Has anybody said that the meaning of this ayah is such? But let's open Tafsir al-Quran al-Azim lil-Imam Ibn Kathir. Let's open Tafsir Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, al-Imam al-Qurtubi, etc., etc. Let's see what Ibn Abbas and Ibn Mas'ud and Abdullah ibn Umar and etc., etc., etc. Ulama al-Sahaba. What they said about the meaning of this ayah. Is this what they said? Ajib.
They did know this ayah.
There is no ayah. Mujahid, he said, notice, and I want you to notice this with me. Mujahid, he said, I reviewed and studied the Quran with Ibn Abbas, ayah. I stopped him at every ayah and asked him about the meaning. And then he said, there is no ayah in the Quran that he said, I do not know the meaning of which.
I have a question related to the discussion, not outside of it. You said there is an inherent, you said I quoted, there is an inherent meaning of weakness.
Yes, in mercy.
In mercy, being merciful. In Quran, what we see that a logical consequence of Allah's mercifulness is that He will establish Day of Judgment and reward good doers and punish bad doers. Like كتب على نفسه الرحمة ليجمعنكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب. This doesn't sound like there is an inherent weakness.
They said in the humans, when a person is merciful, when you exercise mercy, right? When you are in a position that you can actually take revenge, for example, or take your right forcefully, or be able to actually, affirm your rights. If you show mercy, there is an inherent. Don't get me wrong. It's not something a deficiency in being merciful, but it is accompanied from the meaning of it is there is some weakness in it. So they said, based on that understanding, right, then if we say that Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful, then we are attributing, this is what they said. We're not saying this is correct, but what they said is that this means that we are attributing to Allah Azza wa Jal a deficiency, a weakness. And Allah Azza wa Jal is above that. So then they made ta'wil. Based on that argumentation, they said that means that the mercy should be or must be explained, ta'wil. We explain it as al-in'am, yani providing provisions and providing to people. They said merciful, Allah Azza wa Jal being merciful, yani He is providing, not the mercy that we know. Because if we do that, then we are, on one hand, we are drawing similarity between Allah Azza wa Jal and His servant, and attributing a deficiency to Allah Azza wa Jal, which is weakness. We say this is not correct. We're not saying that, because all the attributes that we affirm to Allah Azza wa Jal, although they have the same meaning, we are merciful, and Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful. Yani Allah Azza wa Jal described Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Rahim. Bil mu'minina ra'ufun Rahim. And Allah Azza wa Jal described Himself as Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So a Rahim here and Rahim there. The term is same. But does it mean that the reality of it is the same? We say no. All of the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, although they are called a similar name as when they apply to the servants, with a big difference that these attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal are perfect, are complete, are glorious, are deficiency-free from every aspect, while the same does not hold true to the servants. And affirming these attributes does not draw similarity. This is what it means. Now, وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. We'll actually disconnect it afterward. If you could just bring the cable back, lovely.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة.